The sun was very hot in the year 1887. The dust flew everywhere in the small town of Copper Ridge. It was the kind of place where poor people lived and worked hard for very little money. The rich people had big ranches with many animals. The poor people had nothing. Thomas Garrett was one of the poorest men in Copper Ridge. He was 35 years old, but he looked much older. His face was brown and burnt from the sun. His clothes were old and had many holes. His boots were broken. He did not own a house or a ranch or any land. He only had a small piece of rocky ground on the edge of town that no one wanted to buy. He slept there in a small shelter that he made from old wood and animal skins. Thomas had not always been poor. His father had owned a good ranch, but his father died when Thomas was young. His mother married another man, and that man took all the money and land. Thomas's mother died soon after. Thomas was left with nothing. He was only a boy then, with no family and no help. For 20 years, Thomas worked hard. He worked on other people's ranches. He broke horses. He helped with the cattle. He cut wood in the forest. He did anything people asked him to do, but he never made enough money. He always stayed poor. Other cowboys laughed at him. They said he was unlucky. They said bad things happened to him because he was weak. Thomas never said anything back. He just worked harder and harder. The only good thing Thomas had was his horse, a brown horse named Buck. Buck was old and tired, like Thomas. But Buck never left him. They were friends. They understood each other. Every night, Thomas would sit with Buck and talk to him. He would tell Buck his dreams and his sadness. Buck would listen. One very hot afternoon, Thomas was riding through a canyon near the mountains. He was going to cut wood to sell in town. This canyon was quiet and lonely. Not many people came here. The rocks were very big and very old. The ground was dry and empty. As Thomas rode slowly through the canyon, he saw something strange. There was a shape on the ground ahead. At first, he thought it was a rock, but as he came closer, he saw it was a horse. A big brown mare lay on the ground. She was not moving. Thomas knew immediately that she was dead. But then he heard something that made his heart stop. It was a small, sad sound. It was a baby horse crying. Thomas got down from Buck very quickly. Near the dead mare, he saw two young foals. They were very small, maybe only 2 or 3 months old. They looked lost and scared. The baby horses were walking around their mother, pushing her with their noses. They did not understand that she was dead. They wanted her to get up. They wanted milk. They wanted help. The foals were very thin. Thomas could see their bones under their skin. They had been without food for maybe 1 day, maybe 2 days. They would die soon if no one helped them. Thomas looked at the dead mare. She was young and strong. Maybe she got sick. Maybe she fell and hurt herself. Maybe she was tired from taking care of 2 babies alone. No one would ever know. She was just dead now, in this lonely canyon, far from help. Thomas looked at the 2 foals again. One was brown like the mother. One was black with white on its face. Both had very sad eyes. They looked at Thomas and cried. They thought maybe he could help them. Maybe he was their mother. Thomas's heart was breaking. He knew what he should do. He should leave them here. Other cowboys would have left them. These foals would die anyway. That was the way of life. The strong animals lived. The weak animals died. That was nature. No one could change that. But Thomas could not walk away. He thought about himself when he was a boy. He had lost his mother. He had no one to take care of him. He was hungry and cold and scared, just like these baby horses. He remembered the feeling of being alone in the world. He remembered no one helping him. He remembered crying at night because he had no one. Thomas made a choice. It was a crazy choice. It was a poor man's choice to help 2 animals he could not afford to help. But he made it anyway. He looked at Buck. "What do you think, friend?" he asked. Buck did not answer. Buck just looked at the foals with kind eyes. Thomas took off his belt and made a rope. He led one foal to Buck. The foal was scared and did not want to come. But Thomas was gentle. He whispered soft words. He said, "Don't be scared, little one. I will help you. I will take you away from here." It took a long time to lead both foals out of the canyon. They were weak and slow. They cried and did not understand. But Thomas was patient. He stayed with them. He talked to them. He told them everything would be okay. When they finally reached his small land on the edge of town, the sun was going down. The sky was orange and red. Thomas was very tired. The foals were very tired too. He gave them water from his well. He gave them some grain that he had saved. He made a shelter with blankets and old wood. He stayed with them all night, making sure they were okay. As Thomas sat in the dark, watching the two baby horses sleep, he felt something he had not felt in many years. He felt a reason to live. He felt like his life meant something. He had two small creatures depending on him now. They needed him. He would not let them down. The next morning, all of Copper Ridge knew. The poor cowboy had brought home two foals. The crazy, poor man was going to try to keep them alive.
The news spread through Copper Ridge like wildfire. By the time the sun came up the next morning, everyone in town knew that Thomas Garrett had brought two foals to his poor little land. And everyone had something to say about it. The men at the saloon laughed the loudest. They sat on the wooden benches outside, drinking their beer and talking about the crazy poor cowboy. "Thomas has lost his mind," said one man named Jake. "He cannot even feed himself. How will he feed two babies?" Another man, a big rancher called Mr. Hollis, shook his head and smiled. "It is a waste of time. Those foals will die anyway. Nature is cruel. The weak die. That is just how it is." The shopkeeper in town, Mr. Perry, did not laugh. But he was worried. He told Thomas that it was a bad idea. "You do not have money, Thomas," Mr. Perry said when Thomas came to buy grain and milk. "You do not have a job that pays well. How will you keep these animals alive? You will spend all your money. You will have nothing left for yourself." Thomas understood what everyone was saying. He knew they were probably right, but he did not care what they thought. He only cared about Spirit and Storm. That was what he called the foals. The brown one was Spirit. The black one with the white face was Storm. The first week was very hard. Thomas had to wake up before the sun came up. He had to milk the goats he owned to feed Spirit and Storm. The foals were still very young. They could not eat regular grass. They needed milk and soft food. Thomas mixed grain with water to make it soft enough for them to eat. He had almost no money. He spent his last dollars on milk powder and good grain. His own food became very bad. He ate only bread and beans. He drank only water. He stopped going to the saloon. He stopped buying new clothes. Everything he had, he gave to Spirit and Storm. Every night, Thomas worked extra jobs. He would chop wood until midnight. His hands became very sore and bloody. He would mend broken things for people. He would clean barns. He would do anything for a few coins. Then he would take those coins and buy more food for the foals. The townspeople watched him. They saw him working day and night. They saw his clothes getting more and more torn. They saw his face getting thinner. And they said he was foolish. They said he was wasting his time on animals that would never be worth anything. They said a poor man should take care of himself first, not animals. But something amazing started to happen. People began to notice that Thomas was changing. For many years, Thomas had looked sad and hopeless. His eyes were always empty. He never smiled. He never talked to people. He seemed like a man who had given up on life. But now, everything was different. Thomas smiled. Every day he would smile. He would smile when he saw Spirit and Storm. He would talk to them for hours. He would tell them about his day. He would tell them his dreams. He would tell them that they were special and beautiful and worthy of love. The foals grew stronger every day. They were still small, but they were getting bigger. Their coats became shiny and clean because Thomas brushed them every evening. He talked to them while he brushed. "You are so beautiful," he would say. "One day, you will be the finest horses in all the West. I promise you. I promise you will be okay. A young girl named Emma saw Thomas working with the foals one day. Emma was 9 years old. She lived in town with her parents. She came to Thomas's land and watched him work. She saw how gentle he was. She saw how much he loved the two animals. "Mr. Garrett," Emma said, "why do you work so hard for the horses if people say it is a bad idea?" Thomas stopped what he was doing. He looked at Emma with kind eyes. "Because, little one," he said, "these babies need someone to love them. They have no mother. They have no family. If I do not help them, no one will. And I know what it feels like to have no one. I know that feeling very well." Emma understood. From that day on, she would come to help Thomas. She was just a small girl, but she would help brush the horses. She would carry water. She would bring them apples from her mother's garden. And her mother, Mrs. Sarah, began to help too. She would bring milk and blankets. Other people started to change their minds slowly. They began to see what Thomas saw. They began to understand that his love for these animals was real. It was not foolish. It was beautiful. An old man named Mr. Dobson came one day. He had not spoken to Thomas in years. Mr. Dobson was sick and sad. He had lost his family. He had no one to care for. He watched Thomas working with Spirit and Storm. He watched how happy Thomas was. And Mr. Dobson cried. "Thomas," Mr. Dobson said, "you have shown me something important. You have shown me that love is more important than money. Love is more important than what people say. Love is the only thing that makes life worth living." By the end of the first month, Spirit and Storm were strong and healthy. They would run around in circles. They would play together. They would come when Thomas called them. They loved him, and Thomas loved them so much that his heart felt like it would break sometimes. At night, Thomas would sit between the two foals. He would put one hand on Spirit and one hand on Storm. He would feel their warm bodies breathing. He would feel their hearts beating, and he would feel his own broken heart slowly becoming whole again. The poor cowboy who had nothing now had everything. He had two creatures who loved him. He had a reason to wake up in the morning. He had hope, and that was worth more than all the money in the world. 3 years passed. The seasons changed many times. Winter came with snow and cold. Spring came with new green grass. Summer came with hot days and clear skies. Fall came with orange leaves. And through all of this, Thomas Garrett took care of Spirit and Storm. The foals grew and grew. They became young horses. They became strong horses. And they became the most beautiful horses anyone in Copper Ridge had ever seen. Spirit was a deep brown color, like rich chocolate. His coat shined in the sun like polished metal. His legs were long and strong. His eyes were intelligent and kind, like his master's eyes. He could run faster than the wind. He could jump higher than any horse in the territory. Storm was black with a white stripe down his face and white on his feet. He was even bigger than Spirit. His muscles were powerful. When he ran, the ground seemed to shake. He was wild and free, but he was also gentle with Thomas. When Thomas called, Storm would come running, his mane flying behind him like a flag. Together, Spirit and Storm were perfect. They moved together like they shared one mind. They seemed to dance when they ran. Ranchers from all around came to see them. Rich businessmen came from distant towns. Everyone said the same thing. "These are the finest horses we have ever seen." And everyone wanted to buy them. The first person to offer money was Mr. Hollis, the big rancher who had laughed at Thomas years before. Mr. Hollis came to Thomas's land one day in his fancy wagon. "Thomas," Mr. Hollis said, "I will give you $500 for Spirit and Storm. That is more money than you have seen in your whole life. You could build a real house. You could buy land. You could have a good life." Thomas smiled, but shook his head. "No, Mr. Hollis. These are my friends. They are not for sale." Mr. Hollis could not believe it. "You are crazy," he said, but he left money on the table anyway. Thomas pushed it back to him. Then other rich men came. A horse trainer from Texas offered $600. A businessman from Colorado offered $800. A wealthy lady from the East offered $1,000. Enough money to make Thomas rich for the rest of his life. But Thomas always said the same thing. "No, these horses are my family. Money cannot buy family." The whole town was confused. How could a poor man turn down so much money? How could he say no to becoming rich? But Thomas knew something that the rich men did not understand. He knew that Spirit and Storm could not be replaced with money. He He knew that love was more important than gold. Thomas still worked hard, but now he worked with the horses. He taught them to run fast. He taught them to jump. He taught them to be brave and smart. Every day, he would spend hours with Spirit and Storm. He would talk to them. He would tell them stories about his life. He would tell them that they were special and important. The townspeople began to respect Thomas. They saw that he was not greedy. They saw that he loved the horses more than money. They saw that he had become a different man. He was no longer sad and broken. He was a man with a purpose. Emma, the little girl who had helped him, was now 12 years old. She would come every day to help with the horses. She had become Thomas's helper and friend. Together, they would care for Spirit and Storm. "Mr. Garrett," Emma asked one day, "why do you not sell them? You could have a beautiful house. You could rest and not work so hard." Thomas sat down and looked at Emma. "Emma," he said, "when I found Spirit and Storm, I was a broken man. I had nothing. But these horses gave me a reason to live. They gave me love. They gave me hope. If I sold them, I would be broken again. Some things are more precious than a house or money. Some things are precious because they are real and they are true." But not everyone in the world was like Thomas. There was a man named Victor Ashford who came from Denver. Victor Ashford was very rich and very powerful. He owned many businesses. He was used to getting anything he wanted. He had heard about Spirit and Storm, and he wanted them. Victor Ashford came to Thomas's land in a black wagon pulled by 4 strong horses. He was a tall man with hard eyes. He did not smile. "Thomas Garrett," Victor said, "I am Victor Ashford from Denver. I have come to buy your horses. I will give you $2,000. That is more money than any man in this town makes in 10 years. You will be rich. You will be able to do anything you want." Thomas looked at Victor Ashford. He saw a man who did not understand love. He saw a man who thought everything could be bought with money. "No," Thomas said quietly. "Spirit and Storm are not for sale. Not for any price." Victor Ashford's face became red with anger. "No one says no to me," he said. "I always get what I want. Always." He left in a fury, his wagon wheels kicking up dust. That night, Thomas could not sleep. He had a bad feeling. He went outside to check on Spirit and Storm. They were nervous. Their eyes were wide and scared. They could sense danger. Thomas was right to be worried. At midnight, Victor Ashford returned. But this time, he did not come alone. He came with 5 men on horses. These were bad men who would do anything for money. They had guns and ropes. They came to steal Spirit and Storm. Thomas heard them coming. He ran to the shelter where the horses slept. "Spirit, Storm," he called. "We have to go. We have to run." But the bad men were coming fast. They were getting closer. Victor Ashford was on his horse, laughing like a crazy man. "Burn it down," Victor shouted. "Burn everything. Get those horses." One of the bad men threw a burning stick at the wooden shelter. Fire started immediately. The wood was dry. The flames grew very fast and very hot. Thomas grabbed the halters of Spirit and Storm. "Come on, boys. We have to run. We have to get out of here." The horses were scared of the fire, but they trusted Thomas. They followed him. Together, they ran toward the dark mountains, leaving behind everything Thomas owned. The shelter burned down. The fence burned down. All of Thomas's belongings burned. But Spirit and Storm were alive. They had escaped into the night. Thomas did not know what would happen next. He did not know that his troubles were just beginning. But he knew one thing for sure. He would never let Spirit and Storm go. He would fight for them with his last breath. Thomas ran through the mountains all night with Spirit and Storm. The darkness was complete. He could not see the path in front of him. Rocks and branches cut his skin. His boots broke, but he did not stop. He kept running. The foals ran beside him, trusting him completely even though they were scared. By morning, Thomas and the horses were deep in the mountains. They were far away from Victor Ashford and his bad men. They were safe for now, but they were also lost. Thomas found a small cave and led Spirit and Storm inside. The cave was cool and dark. There was a little stream of water. Thomas let the horses drink. He sat down on the ground and cried. Everything was gone. His shelter was burned. His small land was destroyed. He had nothing again, but at least Spirit and Storm were alive. For 3 days, Thomas stayed in the mountains with the horses. He had no food except some plants he found. He had no blankets. He had no help. He was cold and hungry and scared. But he stayed alive because he had to take care of Spirit and Storm. Meanwhile, back in Copper Ridge, the townspeople discovered what had happened. They saw the burned shelter. They saw the burned fence. They saw Thomas's things destroyed. And they found a note that Victor Ashford had left, saying he had taken the horses. Something changed in the hearts of the people of Copper Ridge that day. They had laughed at Thomas. They had said he was foolish. But now they understood. They understood that Thomas was brave. They understood that he had loved those horses more than his own life. Emma was the first to speak. The little girl who had helped Thomas stood up in the middle of town and spoke loudly. "We have to help Mr. Garrett," she cried. "He has been so kind to us. He has shown us that love is important. We cannot let Victor Ashford take his horses." Her mother, Mrs. Sarah, agreed. "Emma is right," Mrs. Sarah said. "Thomas Garrett is a good man. He helped us understand what is important in life. We must help him now." Mr. Perry, the shopkeeper, said, "I will help. I have been wrong about Thomas. He is not foolish. He is brave." Even Mr. Hollis, the big rancher who had laughed at Thomas, stood up. "I will help too," he said. "I see now that I was wrong. Thomas has taught me something important about love and loyalty." Soon, the whole town was organized. They made groups to search the mountains. They brought food and water and blankets. They brought horses to help with the search. Even the doctor came to be ready to help if Thomas was hurt. Emma led one search group. She knew Thomas and the horses better than anyone. She knew where they might go. She searched the caves and the mountains. She looked along the streams. She called out Thomas's name over and over. On the fourth day, Emma found them. She was walking near a canyon when she heard a horse neigh. She followed the sound. And there, in a small hidden canyon with tall rock walls, she saw Spirit and Storm. They were drinking from a small waterfall, and Thomas was sitting on the ground between them, sleeping. Thomas was very thin. His clothes were torn and dirty. He had not shaved in days. He looked like he had been through a great battle. But he was alive, and Spirit and Storm were safe. Emma cried with joy. She ran to Thomas and shook him awake. "Mr. Garrett, Mr. Garrett, wake up. I found you. The whole town is looking for you. They want to help." Thomas opened his eyes slowly. He thought he was dreaming, but Emma was real. She was there. She was smiling. "Come on," Emma said. "We have to go back. Everyone wants to help you. Everyone cares about you." Thomas could hardly believe it. He was so tired and weak that he could barely walk. But Emma helped him, and Spirit and Storm followed them out of the canyon. When they returned to Copper Ridge, something amazing happened. The whole town came out to meet them. People lined the streets. They cheered. They clapped. They had signs that said, "Welcome back, Thomas," and "Spirit and Storm saved." But the biggest surprise was yet to come. 3 fancy men in expensive suits came forward. They were rich businessmen from Denver and Colorado Springs. They had heard about Thomas's story. They had heard about how a poor man loved 2 horses so much that he would risk everything for them. They had heard about how the whole town came together to help him. Thomas Garrett, the first man, said, "My name is Mr. James Wilson. These are my partners, Mr. Robert Chun and Mr. William Hart. We're businessmen. We invest in things that matter. And we believe that you and your horses matter very much." Thomas did not understand. He just listened. "We want to help you," Mr. Wilson continued. "We will give you money to build a real ranch. We will help you create a horse training center. We want to breed horses like Spirit and Storm. We want to teach people how to train horses with love and kindness, not cruelty. Will you help us do this?" Thomas felt tears running down his face. I do not know what to say," he said. "Just say yes," Mr. Chin said, smiling. And then there was one more surprise. Police officers came. They had arrested Victor Ashford. They had found proof that he had burned Thomas's shelter. They had found that he had tried to steal the horses. Victor Ashford would go to jail for a very long time. The bad man who had tried to destroy Thomas was now a prisoner. Justice had come to Copper Ridge. That night, Thomas stood with Spirit and Storm under the stars. His friends were all around him. Emma was there. Mrs. Sarah was there. Mr. Perry was there. Mr. Hollis was there. The 3 businessmen were there. "I have something to say," Thomas said quietly. 3 years ago, I was a broken man. I had nothing. But these two horses gave me a reason to live. They taught me about love. They taught me that love is more important than anything else. He put his hands on Spirit and Storm. And you, my friends, you have taught me that people are good. You have taught me that when one person shows kindness, others will follow. You have taught me that a whole town can come together and do amazing things. Thomas looked at Mr. Wilson. Yes, he said, I will help you. I will build a ranch. I will teach people how to love horses. I will show the world that kindness is strong. Kindness is powerful. Kindness changes everything. The townspeople cheered. Spirit and Storm neighed loudly, as if they understood. And Thomas knew that his life had changed forever. The poor cowboy was poor no more. But more important than that, he was no longer alone. 5 years had passed since Thomas Garrett built his ranch with the help of the businessmen from Denver. The small, rocky land that no one wanted had transformed into something beautiful and important. Now, it was called the Garrett Horse Ranch, and it was known throughout the entire West. The ranch was not like other ranches. It was special because it was built on love, not just money. The main barn was large and strong, with stalls for many horses. But every stall was clean and comfortable. Every horse had fresh water and good food. Every animal was treated with kindness. The training ground was wide and green. Thomas had taught his workers to train horses with patience and gentleness, not with whips and cruelty. Horses learned faster when they were not afraid. They became better animals when they were loved. Spirit and Storm lived in the finest stalls of the ranch. They were now fully grown horses, strong and beautiful beyond anything people had ever seen. They had become famous throughout the West. Ranchers came from Texas, California, Colorado, and beyond to see them. Everyone wanted to see the two magnificent horses that a poor cowboy had saved. But the most important thing about Spirit and Storm was not their beauty. It was their children. Spirit and Storm had many foals together. Each foal they had was just as beautiful and talented as its parents. These foals were the foundation of the greatest horse breeding program in the entire West. They could run faster than any horse. They were smarter and braver than other horses. They were perfect animals because they had been born from perfect love. Thomas did not sell Spirit and Storm's foals for money. Instead, he gave them to people who would love them. He gave a foal to a poor family who had lost their farm. He gave a foal to a school that taught children to ride. He gave foals to old cowboys who had nowhere to go. He gave them to people who had kind hearts. Thomas became the richest man in Copper Ridge, but not because of money. He was rich because he was surrounded by people who loved him. His workers loved him because he treated them fairly and paid them well. The horses loved him because he loved them. The townspeople loved him because he had shown them how to be kind. Emma was now 18 years old. She had grown into a beautiful and intelligent young woman. She worked at the ranch as Thomas's assistant. She helped train the horses. She cared for the newborn foals, and she learned everything about horses from Thomas. One day, Thomas called Emma to sit with him. They sat on a wooden bench outside the main barn, watching Spirit and Storm run in the field. Emma, Thomas said, I want to tell you something important. When I found Spirit and Storm, I was a man with no hope. I thought my life was finished. I thought I would always be poor and alone. Emma listened carefully. But you and your mother believed in me, Thomas continued. You helped me when I had nothing. And then the whole town came together. They showed me that people are good. They show me that kindness matters. And now I want to give back. I want to help others the way you helped me. Thomas took a piece of paper from his pocket. On the paper was his will. Emma, he said, I have no children of my own. So I'm leaving the ranch to you. But not just for you. I am leaving it to you so that you will continue to help others. So that you will continue to show kindness. So that you will continue to teach people about love. Emma cried tears of happiness. I will do it, Mr. Garrett. I promise I will. And one more thing, Thomas said. Please, from now on, call me Thomas. We are not master and servant. We are friends. The ranch grew even bigger and more famous. Thomas built a school where young people could learn about horses and horsemanship. He taught them not just how to ride, but how to be kind to animals. He taught them that every creature deserves respect and love. One day, a poor boy came to the ranch. He was thin and hungry, just like Thomas had been. The boy had no family. He had no one to care for him. Thomas gave him a job at the ranch. He gave him food and a place to sleep. He taught him about horses. Years later, that poor boy became a successful rancher himself. He remembered Thomas's kindness, and he helped other poor people. He opened his own school for poor children. The kindness that Thomas showed had spread like seeds in the wind. It grew and grew, helping many people. This happened again and again. Thomas's kindness touched people's lives, and those people went out and helped others. A chain of goodness spread across the West, and it all started with one poor cowboy who found two baby horses and loved them. When Thomas was 70 years old, he was still working with Spirit and Storm every day. They were old now like him. Their bodies were not as strong, but their spirits were still beautiful and powerful. One evening, Thomas sat between Spirit and Storm, just like he used to do when they were babies. He put one hand on Spirit and one hand on Storm. "Thank you," he said to them softly. "Thank you for changing my life. Thank you for teaching me how to love. Thank you for showing me that life is worth living." Spirit and Storm stood quietly beside him. They had been together for more than 30 years. They had shared everything. They understood each other completely. The townspeople of Copper Ridge remembered Thomas as their greatest hero. They built a statue of him in the center of town. The statue showed Thomas standing with Spirit and Storm. People came from all over to see it. But the most important monument to Thomas was not made of stone or metal. It was made of living things. It was Spirit and Storm and all their children. It was the horses that carried kindness across the West. It was the people that Thomas had helped. It was the lives that had been changed because one man decided to love two orphaned foals. Years after Thomas died, people still told his story. They told how a poor cowboy found two baby horses and gave them his love. They told how his kindness saved the animals and how the animals saved his life. They told how one man's courage and love changed an entire town. Mothers told the story to their children. Fathers told it to their sons. Teachers told it in schools. And every person who heard the story remembered one important lesson: that kindness always matters, that love is the most powerful force in the world, and that one person with a kind heart can change everything. Spirit and Storm's bloodline continued for generations. The finest horses in the West came from their family. But more important than their strength and beauty was the spirit of kindness and love that lived in their hearts. That spirit had been given to them by Thomas Garrett, the poor cowboy who believed that even the smallest act of love could change the world. And he was right.